Good day, Steve Anderson here. Welcome to the Crown Council webinar today, Maximum Reimbursement 2019. We are 5 minutes from kickoff and already have a record number of people online with more to come. So welcome. I'm going to walk through a couple of announcements, things you need to know from the Crown Council before we start at the top of the hour. So we are very excited to announce and give you an update on Smiles for Life 2019. Last year's campaign collected a record amount of money and donations all over the world. Smiles for Life program to date has now raised and donated over $42 million to children's and dental-related charitable programs around the world, has become the largest charity campaign in dentistry thanks to all of the great work of Crown Council practices around the world. We're very excited for 2019's campaign. If you have signed up for this year's campaign, all of the marketing boxes are being assembled and will be mailed out in the next week and a half. You will have those in hand by February 1st. If by chance you have not signed up for Smiles for Life for this year, we highly recommend that you do that. It's a great new patient generator and raises your visibility in the community. So you can just give the Crown Council a call and take care of that if you have not done it already. It is going to be a fantastic campaign. You'll love the marketing materials that you're going to get that have been put together by My Social Practice. They've done an awesome job once again for making all of that available. Coming up here, 1 week from today, we will be in Las Vegas, Nevada for the Crown Council annual event. Most of you will be there with us. We have an all-star lineup of presenters and activities planned. It will be the best yet. It's got some great things in store. If by chance you have not signed up for the annual event and you would like to attend, we're still 30 days out, so there's time. Typically, the annual event sells out way in advance, which it did this year. And we were fortunate enough to be able to upgrade the annual event venue into a larger facility. So unlike we have never been able to do this in years past, we still now we have additional seating that's available. So if you'd like to make a trip to Las Vegas in 30 days, you are more than welcome to join us for the event of the year. It is a fantastic experience. All the information is at ccannualevent.com, where you can see the lineup of events and register as well if you would still like to do that. We would love to have you. If you've never done it, it is an amazing experience for the whole team. And if you've done it in the past, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this year will be no different, will be fantastic. So looking forward to that and the great events around that. So with that, we are almost at the top of the hour. We will start our webinar in just a few moments. Last thing that I'll mention in terms of announcements is just a reminder to stay up on the Crown Council Mentor of the Month podcast. We now are recording more than just once a month. So we have several mentors each month, and encourage you to use all the training resources that are available at crowncouncil.org. The Mentor of the Month is also available on the iTunes podcast. You can subscribe that way as well. So with that, welcome to our webinar today. Again, this is Steve Anderson, and I'm welcoming today Tanya Bailey and Chris Taconis, practice advisors at the Total Patient Service Institute. I have had the privilege of working with these two ladies for well over a decade, and in some cases longer. They context for this is both Chris and Tanya spend their days around the country in dental practices implementing total patient service systems with teams. They have seen, with all due respect to all those listening, they have seen more dental practices than most anyone listening here will ever see in their entire career. So they all over the country. And so they have some great wisdom to share today. This webinar has been under construction for quite some time. It is packed with information that you can use today in your practice. My recommendation would be to take copious notes today, and you will want to re-listen. So this webinar will be posted at crowncouncil.org under the training tab in the webinar room later today. Share it with your team. You'll want to go back. Again, a ton of content here that you'll want to review on a regular basis. So with that, Tanya and Chris, welcome. And thank you for doing our webinar today and making all this work. So time is yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. This is Tanya Bailey, and we are excited to share with you what's new, what's old, and what's changed, as well as some fantastic tips, tricks, and verbal skills. So with that being said, we have 15 new codes to go through, and some of these are going to matter today. So let's get started. And if you're like me, you may have wondered where these new codes come from. So the ADA Code Maintenance Committee meets yearly, and they review all the submitted change requests. And this year they had 84 substantive action request changes. And based on those requests, they came up with these 15 new codes. Now, make note, the existence of a code does not imply that it will be reimbursed by dental plans. It just simply means it's the correct code to use. So let's get started. If we can look at our first new code, it is in our diagnostic category, D0412. This is a blood glucose level test code. So with a testing meter, you can now check that glucose level of your patients. And the rationale behind this is that diabetes is one of the most chronic diseases. Therefore, dentists are likely to encounter patients with this disease, and it is essential to know blood sugar level before beginning a long, complex procedure. Be sure to document this in your records and make the appropriate medical referral as needed. Our next two set of codes, these are really what I would call a replacement code. So D1525, Space Maintainer, which is going to show up in a few minutes on our deleted codes, was not specific to an arch. So at many of your requests to speed up efficiency of claims processing and speed up that payment, the new codes to use this year are D1526 for a bilateral maxillary space maintainer, and D1527 also bilateral for the mandibular arch. So remember, D1525 will no longer be the correct code to use. You'll want to replace that with 1526 and 27. Our next new codes are D5282 and 5283. Again, this is replacement, so two new codes to replace an outgoing code, and it is in replacement of D5281. These are going to be our removable unilateral partial denture, maxillary, and then 5283. Same thing, mandibular. So two new great codes, again, to speed up that claims processing. Our next code will come in handy, particularly for patients at high risk for breaking their dentures due to bruxism, D5976, brand new code that is designed to add that metal substructure to an acrylic full denture. So this is going to be a great code when you need to add some strength into that patient's denture. So our next code is, again, also completely brand new codes, D9130. This is the TMJ, joint dysfunction, non-invasive physical therapy. I know from being in your practices, many of you are doing therapies such as massage, cold laser therapy, ultrasound. So we actually now have a code for that, and it is a per visit or per session basis. Our next one is D9613. And this code is the, as it says, infiltration of a sustained release therapeutic drug, single or multiple sites. So whether you do one or many, it is a one-use code. It is not for anesthetic, but it's going to be something that you might use as such as an anti-inflammatory basis. So our next new ones. So these next three slides, pay close attention. These next three codes replace a code that you all use on a regular basis. First one is D9944. The rationale here is historically we've used 9940 occlusal guard for any and every type of appliance. Well, we now have specific codes for specific appliances. This first one is for your traditional full arch hard appliance. This will be a removable appliance, and it is not to be reported for anything that would involve sleep apnea, snoring, or TMD appliances. They do have their own set of codes. The next one, Steve, is 9945. This is our soft appliance, also full arch. Again, for bruxism or occlusal factors, also not for our sleep apnea or snoring. And then lastly is D9946, and this is an occlusal guard hard appliance, partial arch. So these three codes replace our outgoing code D9940. These three codes you will use dependent upon the type of device and the size of the arch, whether it's a full or partial. Super excited for these codes because I just think it's going to make us more specific on coding what we are in fact really doing. This will eliminate the need for a by report procedure. All right, we're coming down to the line of on our 15 new codes. 9961, many of you find a need to copy patient records fairly frequently, and there is now a specific code not only to track that, but you will want to check with your specific state on what you are allowed to charge your patients. Each state has a little bit different rules on that. And if appropriate or when appropriate, you can add a fee to 9961 and track the duplication or copying of your records. And then lastly, our last new code is 9990. So without belaboring all the legal pieces of it, according to our Affordable Care Act regulations, translation services may be required depending upon your involvement with federal type insurance plans or programs. So we now have D9990, which is the certified translation or sign language services that are on a per visit basis. So that wraps up our new codes, and as I mentioned, several of these are replacement codes. So here are our 4 deleted codes. Now, when I say deleted, I want to make sure that we are clear. Deleted means in the event you file these old codes to your insurance companies, they will be as though they never existed. So they will kick those claims back and it will slow down claims processing. So please make sure to update your practice management software codes to reflect that these are no longer viable codes. In fact, tip trick number 1, everyone's software should have their CDT 2019 code update ready and available. Be sure to download that so you have access also to all of the new codes. So D1515, again, is our space maintainer fixed bilateral that is gone. 1525 is our space maintainer removable bilateral. It is gone. Our 5281 removable unilateral partial denture is gone. And then lastly, again, I know many of you use this code, 9940 is no longer a code. So please make sure to catch those replacement codes that we talked about earlier. And if you're thinking we're going fast, just remember this is being recorded. We have 5 code revisions. Mostly this is just wording and kind of modernizes our code verbiage. 5211 and 5212 remove the wording of conventional clasps and changes it to retentive clasping materials. So that just gives you more flexibility on the types of partials that you are making for your patients. The code is still the same with regards to maxillary or mandibular. They've just changed the wording from conventional clasp to retentive. Our next 2 code revisions, similar on 5630, is we've taken out that word clasp and again switched it to retentive clasping materials. And then 7283. This is great because this is placement of a device to facilitate eruption of an impacted tooth. So it removes the requirement for it to be specifically an orthodontic bracket and just switches it to the word attachment. So again, it just simply gives you more flexibility. And remember, report that surgical exposure using a separate code of a 7280. Our last code revision, and we will have come to the end of our new, old, and updated, is 9219. So the wording on this has been changed to add moderate sedation. So evaluation for moderate, deep, or general anesthesia. Previously, this code was only for deep or general, and it now does include moderate sedation, which we know many of you do in your practices. Okay, so that's a wrap on that. Let's talk about common coding mistakes and what you can do to make sure that you don't make them. Today, we still see, Chris, and I know you would agree with this, alternating 4910 and 1110 is never, ever a good plan. In fact, according to Dr. Charles Blair on Coding with Confidence, he would go so far as to call that fraud. We always have to report what we do when we do it, even when the insurance companies tell us to do otherwise. Chris, what's been your experience?
Tanya, I was just going to say with you as well, a lot of times we discover that when we go into practices, the team members that are submitting all the insurance are being told that this is okay to do, whether it's by the insurance company or even by the periodontist that your patients might be seeing alternatively. So we have to keep in line and make sure that we understand alternating is not a good plan. That's not what we should be doing. We should always stick to coding for what we're doing in the practice consistently so that we're never on the cusp of doing something that the insurance company would consider fraudulent.
Absolutely. So another common miscoding or even missed opportunity is our exam codes. So what kind of exam is this anyway? Common codes used that we see in practices all across the country are D0120, our periodic exam, our D0140, our limited or emergency exam, and D0150, which is our comprehensive new or existing patient exam. So let's walk through kind of a grid, if you will, or some of the key elements of the other 3 codes that you can use. So on our next slide, we look at D0160. So a hypothetical. Patient comes in for a first visit, you do a comprehensive 0150 or a D0180, which we will talk about a little bit more in a moment. And then they return at some point for a extensive problem issue, not a single tooth issue, but something more extensive. So the problem focused extensive D0160 would be the appropriate exam to use, such as a complex TMJ issue or a complex, perhaps even surgical issue. The next code to take a look at is the key elements of our D0170. So a patient has been in for a previous type of exam, perhaps an 0140 with a PA, and then later on they return for a reevaluation of that same issue. Now, this is not a post-op. This would just be the reevaluation of an established patient for a specific problem or specific issue in which they have not moved forward, if you will, with treatment. So typically used to report the follow-up monitoring of soft tissue abnormalities or leukoplakia. It can even be used to report follow-up appointments to monitor and evaluate trauma following an accident or root development or continuing pain, which has not been definitively diagnosed. And then finally, when to use D0180. This is still one of the things that we see in practice after practice not being utilized to its maximum benefit. This code is able to be reported on a new or existing patient, and it is a comprehensive periodontal evaluation on a qualified patient. So what does qualified mean? Well, they show signs and symptoms of periodontal disease, which could be visible, could be bleeding, could be inflammation, or that they would have risk factors for such disease, such as smoking, diabetes, heart disease. This, again, can be used on a new or an established patient. And one common misperception is that this is a hygiene code. This is not a hygiene code. This is a doctor's exam code, and it includes a hard tissue evaluation as well. So therefore, this is not in addition to any other exam code. It's in place of. So for example, you have an existing patient in for their periodic visit, and you thought you were going to be doing a D0120 periodic exam, and today things have changed. They share with you a diabetes diagnosis, a heart disease diagnosis, or some sort of a risk factor, and or they today have bleeding, they have attachment loss, they have some sign of disease. This is now the appropriate code to use. And you must have supporting documentation. So supporting documentation means you must have a complete perio chart, including but not limited to 6 points per tooth, pocket depth, recessions, furcations, mobilities, bleeding points, any type of attachment loss, and a periodontal diagnosis. And I would encourage you to make your periodontal diagnosis in your clinical notes based on your AAP or American Academy of Periodontology case type. So that's supporting information in addition to current full mouth x-rays. Well, current sounds very subjective because it is, and that simply means of diagnostic value. So if you have a FMX from 4 years ago, While that might not meet frequency limitations for a new FMX, it may not be of diagnostic value for today's condition. So we have to balance those two things. So
Tanya?
Yes, ma'am. Go, Chris.
Tanya, I really want to stress what Tanya's saying is so important, because those 3 codes are so underutilized, and I know you're going to discuss more about underutilized codes. When we go into the practices and we're using the same codes in the past for exams and not really utilizing these codes that are more updated, more specific, and will get you better reimbursement for the patient, you're really missing out on having the best utilization for these codes. It's a game changer. So making sure that that's put into place and you run with those codes after this webinar is really important.
Such a great point, Chris. Absolutely. I love your words, game changer. You are correct. So we have also identified underutilized codes. One of the things that we do at Total Patient Service for all of our clients and anyone who's interested is what we call a maximum reimbursement. How to maximize your coding and how to maximize your productivity from the things that you're already doing. So on our next slide, what you'll see is D0220 and D0230. You will recognize those as your PA or periapical X-ray first and periapical X-ray additional. Massively underutilized. 100% of the time when we run an analysis on the practice, we find opportunities for coding these PAs. So when to use them? Well, the most obvious and most often used is when we're doing a limited evaluation. Another time to use those. Generally, 4 bite wings on an adult is a general standard of care for routine X-ray evaluation. And oftentimes we find that there is a lack of anterior X-rays for years at a time. Many practices routinely add a couple of anterior PAs, either in addition to their 4 bite wings or at alternating appointments to those bite wings. And I can not even count how many dentists have told me they have found things they never imagined finding by taking those anterior PAs. So using the PAs for diagnostic purposes first and coding for them is the right thing to do. Last time to use those is document your prep and your seat. So you take them to diagnose, and then you take them to validate that you have a great seating or cementing or bonding of a crown or a bridge or an implant crown, and that we didn't leave anything behind. The next underutilized code still today is our buildup and our small buildup code. So D2950 and D2949. Now, one suggestion for 2950, because I hear routinely that, Tanya, we tried to use that code and it just, the insurance company did not accept it. So narrative tips here always include a narrative or a remark that a core buildup is necessary for crown retention. And it should identify the actual percentage of missing tooth structure. For example, 60% of tooth structure is missing. Many payers require 50% or more of the tooth to be missing for a reimbursement. Now, when it's less than 50% of the tooth missing, many payers will consider the procedure a filler. In addition, 2950 is rejected for endodontically treated teeth. So make sure to use your 2954, which is going to be your post and core if you're in fact placing a post. And then 2949. So this is used to describe the placement of a restorative material in a tooth to prepare for the ultimate placement of a crown, bridge, inlay, or onlay. It is a procedure to provide a more ideal form for the processing or adaptation of the final indirect restoration. So this was described, this foundation is described to provide or establish a more ideal form and potentially to eliminate those undercuts. So remember, 2949 is it's unlikely to be reimbursed. Most payers have determined that a restorative foundation is part of the global procedure. Even so, it is recommended that the procedure be reported, as it will provide utilization information for our payers to consider possible reimbursement. That's how we get those insurance company to change, folks, is we submit what we do. So let's talk about a couple more of those proven narrative secrets. I just talked about making sure to include the narratives for those buildups. You know, narrative writing process takes some time, and it's a small amount of time spent on the front end that pays dividends on the back end. So sometimes we have to go a little slow to go fast, but it pays off when that reimbursement is received after the first submission. Anytime a claim is rejected because there's not enough information, the time taken to go back and find additional information and then respond typically exceeds the time that would have been spent to just do it right the first time. Now, remember this, if a narrative takes too long to write, it takes too long to read. Narratives should be brief and to the point. Remember, dental benefits consultants that are reading these narratives are knowledgeable dental professionals, so they understand dental terms, so no need for a lengthy dissertation. In fact, your character limitation in your remarks section on your claim form is limited to 80 characters. So get your point across in as few words as possible. So some time management tricks on our next slide. Always make sure that your claim is filled out correctly. And I'm going to go through some of the common mistakes on claim forms here in just a moment. Make sure those correct procedures are listed in the claim. And always get those batched claims filed within 24 hours. Do not sit on those claims. And then finally, correct documentation. Send in your x-rays, send in your attachments, complete the narratives, and then always be sure to back up and double check that claim submission status. Verify that your claims validation reports, everything was sent properly, and check for any errors. It will let you know if there were claims missing information or if there were errors that would stall things out. 3 reports. These 3 reports have to be checked daily. Insurance claims not sent, procedures not attached to insurance, and secondary claims not sent. You know, if I was going to add a number 4, it's not a report, but always make sure if you have claims hanging out there that haven't been paid when you run your insurance aging report, if your patient is getting payment, if you do not have assignment of benefits, make sure to go enter a 0 payment and close out those claims because they're just lingering for no reason. So let's talk fraud for just a quick minute. It is not okay to write off the patient portion. One thing we all need to remember is when you are submitting an insurance claim, there is a signature box that the doctor has signed. And even if he hasn't physically signed it, he has signed it electronically. And it states this is the fee he or she intends to charge the patient. So if you have a common practice of billing insurance only, know that you are, in fact, committing insurance fraud. Billing procedures that haven't been completed. So if you start a root canal and you don't finish it, you cannot go ahead and bill out that root canal. You must wait until it's finished. And finally, charging less or different than what was filed. So always code what you do and always charge what you're coding. A couple of tips. We often, in that maximum reimbursement evaluation, find practices using outdated forms. In your claim format section of your practice management software, there is a place to put in your most updated claim format. The current claim format is the 2012 ADA format. I shared with Chris prior to this webinar, just this week, I was doing an evaluation and found a practice still using the 2007 version. So go check that out because it's not the correct form, so it will be missing information. As I mentioned before, remember that your claim form is a legal document that your doctor has signed. And finally, let's look at some common misunderstandings or errors on the form. So think of your form as kind of a checkbox, if you will. And we have created a list, and this is not an exhaustive list, but just a few common errors on your claim form. So box number 33. Box number 33 is where missing teeth will show up. This is pertinent to periodontal or prosthetic or implant service work. It's required that all missing teeth be identified. And this may be true even if the treatment only involves one missing tooth. So not uncommon are for insurance companies to downgrade, unfortunately. And so that bridge on the upper left may be given an alternate allowance of a partial in the event of other missing teeth. And so you want to make sure you send accurate information so that you can prevent delays or requests for additional information later on. Box 35. So when we say the word narrative, this is the box we're talking about. This box is used to convey additional information for a procedure code that requires a report or any additional information that the payer requires. Remember, like I mentioned, yes.
To chime in here, this part about the box 35 is also the area when Tanya was talking about a couple slides ago in regards to charging less or different than what's been filed. For those of you that are having an easy pay options plan in your practice, this would be the place to put what percentage courtesy you're giving to the patient so that it's noted to the insurance company and you're doing everything according to the law.
Great point, Chris. Thank you for sharing that. Remember, 80 characters, that's your limit. So let's talk about box 36. Caution here. This is the box that states, I, the patient, have been informed of the treatment plan and associated fees, and I agree to be responsible for all charges for dental services and materials not paid by my benefit plan, unless prohibited by law or the treating dentist or dental practice has a contractual agreement with my plan prohibiting all or a portion of such charges. To the extent permitted by law, I consent you to use and disclose my protected health information. So all the paperwork that we have patients sign ahead of time, releasing assignment of benefits and our HIPAA, this is their signature on their claim, on your claim that you're filing, stating that they agree to pay those charges. It's very common for us to hear, how should we approach our patient when insurance hasn't paid something? And this is your informational section that they've already agreed. Now make sure that you do have a signed treatment plan. Always have a signed treatment plan because that signed treatment plan goes with box 36. Next slide is box 37. So here is a quick warning. Some plans, this is the assignment of benefit box. Some plans, unfortunately, commonly Delta, will not pay the provider even when the patient has agreed to assignment of benefits. And there is some great news on the horizon. Many states, dental association, are now working on legislation to remove that requirement. And trust me, once we find out, you will all be the first to know. And then box 58. Again, when we evaluate practices and take a look at top down, bottom up, a new dentist has come into the practice and they're an associate perhaps, and the owner dentist is set up in this practice management software as the billing provider and the rendering provider. Rendering simply means the treating dentist. It is illegal to have the owner dentist represented as the treating dentist when they are not. All providers must be credentialed when you are contracted, and then all providers performing services must be listed as the treating dentist. So box 58 is the treating dentist box. Now your billing entity may still be the owner dentist or the owner dentist corporation, and those can be different. So make sure that this box accurately identifies the dentist who performed the procedures. And this is a dentist. This is not a hygienist. It is always a primary provider. Just for reiteration, under no circumstance should another provider be listed as the provider of service, including one who didn't provide supervision, the hygienist, an expanded duty employee. It doesn't matter. Always the treating dentist. Now, some of you may hear that and wonder, but what about our contractual status? Well, that is a great question for another time, and we are always here to help you walk down that path. So, Chris, I am excited for this next part of our presentation. Chris is going to share with us how to use our verbal skills to properly and with the best result communicate all of these things to our patients. Chris, take it away.
All right. So often I know, both Tanya and I know, that you get questions from patients that have to do with their insurance. And one of the biggest questions they ask is, do you take my insurance? And this is typically something that they say over the phone. This happens to be a question that stumps a lot of you, a lot of our team members. So we recommend that you respond by initially asking the question, well, what insurance benefits do you have? So that we can discuss where they are, what kind of benefits they have, instead of saying a yes or no response to that question. We go on further to talk about what experiences our patients in the practice currently have that would appeal to the patient that's asking you that question. So for example, I would say, if Tanya's my patient and she says she has Aetna, I may say, we have a lot of patients with Aetna with your same benefits, and we don't happen to be contracted with that company. Because we're an unrestricted provider, that means we can work with just about any type of insurance. So that way, when we're responding to patients, all patients that call, they are not feeling like they are only held to go to their specific insurance-based practice. That we're telling them that key word is that we're unrestricted. We're an unrestricted provider, and that we're able to work with anybody. Let's talk more about what your insurance plan is, what your insurance benefits are when we see you, but we're going to be able to take you because we're an unrestricted provider. That's a real key term that some of you may not be using yet. So that allows you to help get the patients through the door. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, what if they're specifically an insurance plan we do not take? This opens the door for conversation. It opens the door for you to explore that with the patient instead of closing the door immediately by answering yes or no. What about a patient that says, do you have other patients that come to your practice that have my same insurance? I simply respond, would you like to know why those patients with your benefits choose our practice? And I tell them the truth. So this is about understanding what kind of benefits your practice offers all of your patients. So think about the things that you know patients tell you that are positives about your practice. Maybe the quality of care is optimal. Maybe the doctor is extremely gentle, or that we are great at offering financial options for our patients. And I share that with that patient over the phone. I'll say what our patients tell us is the reason why they're able to come, that they choose to come to the practice, is because of the quality of care and the patient service that we offer that's better than anywhere else. And in addition, we help all of our patients maximize their benefits by filing their claims for them. Would a Monday or a Wednesday appointment work best for you? So highlighting the things that you know are elements, benefits that your patients tell you of why they choose to come to your practice, that's what I share with that patient, whether it's over the phone or in person. And I let them know that we will always help them to maximize their benefits to the best way we can. Here's a great question. Tanya, you and I get this all the time, right?
Absolutely.
Will my insurance cover all of this? Well, that's a great question. And I asked the patient, it sounds like you want to maximize your benefits so you can minimize your portion. Am I right? I want to make sure that I identify what their goal is here so that it's not about whether or not we're going to do treatment or that we'll only do treatment because insurance covers that treatment. We want to talk about, okay, well, it sounds like you want to maximize your benefits so you can minimize your portion. Am I on track? And there's that verbal skill. Now, there are some things that we would consider to be limiting language, trigger terms, things that you may catch yourself saying when you're interacting with patients regarding insurance. So we have taken some time to make sure to get rid of these. It's like deleting the codes. When Tanya talked about deleting codes, this is delete, delete, delete. We no longer say your insurance will only cover. We instead say your insurance savings. This is what we're seeing that your insurance savings is estimated to help you with for your treatment. And what we found is that patients really react in a positive way as we retrain them to consider their insurance as a savings versus a benefit or a checking account that they're withdrawing from. It's a new way to look and present what their insurance is to them. Another one that we've gotten rid of is your out of pocket. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear the word out of pocket, this visual in my head is of someone standing and their pockets are inside out and we're emptying their pocket. And we don't want the patient to think like that. That's not what our intention is. So we've replaced that verbiage with your portion. We no longer say you're out of pocket. That's deleted. We say, Tanya, your portion is going to be $5,000. Your portion is going to be $1,100. And it's a better way to express the fact that the patient has a portion due and we're not emptying their pocket. Make sense?
I love that. It makes a mental image of money just falling right out of my pockets.
Exactly. And, those are some key verbal skills that we've been using consistently for a long time. These are things that you can work on with your team members. They're also verbal skills that if you have a TOPS coach, you could be working on that with them as well. It will get your foot in the door to having a better conversation about their insurance savings, about how they can utilize their insurance savings in your practice and help maximize their benefits while they're with you.
Excellent. So one thing I know about questions is there's a few common questions. And so before Steve takes any other questions, I just wanted to do a couple of the that I see right now on our queue, a couple of the most common questions, which is number one, how do I know if I should be in or out of network after talking about all these codes, and they may or may not be covered. Well, Steve Anderson has an entire webinar on whether or not you should consider going out of network, and you can find that at the Crown Council website, crowncouncil.org, under the training tab and the webinar tab. So definitely check that out if that's something that you're interested in. Another common question is, how do I know when it's time to increase my fees? Well, you are in luck. It is now 2019, and through the Crown Council, we have the updated fee analysis by zip code. So we will give you a resource of how to acquire that fee analysis, and it's included in your membership. So no additional fee for that. Steve, what have we left out?
All right, just a couple of questions real good. And thank you, ladies, for great content. That was a rapid review and new stuff. Tanya, for clarification, if we can go back to code. Hold on half a second. Sorry about that. If we can go back to code 5876.
Okay.
And, just so we're clear on the right code, is it code 5876 or 5976? Which is correct?
Well, let me go take a look, because that's a great question, Steve.
I know the slide says 5876.
I think it's 5876.
Did I misspeak that one?
Yeah, so it is.
I think you said 59.
Right?
Okay. Here we go. I just have to, it's 5876. Add metal substructure to an acrylic full denture per arch.
Perfect. Okay. Next question is, what about a hard/soft appliance, specifically from Glidewell Lab? Any thoughts on that?
If that's what I'm thinking of as it's kind of hard on the outside, but it's designed to be softer on the inside, if that's what you're referring to, I would use the hard appliance, the 9944. So the Accluguard hard appliance full arch would be my gut.
Perfect. Excellent. Let me give a couple of resources and references. One, Dr. Charles Blair, who is a frequent mentor at the Crown Council, produces some great information on coding. If anyone's looking for more specifics, Practice Booster that he produces every year is a great resource. Tanya, you mentioned the fee analysis. If you have not done your fee analysis in the last 12 months, you're welcome to email answers@totalpatientservice.com. In that email, if you'll just reference this webinar, include your zip code for which you'd like the analysis done and your practice contact information. We will produce your fee analysis, get that back to you, and with a short consult on the phone so that you understand how to read that and you can adjust your fees accordingly. We recommend that be done every 12 months. It's done code by code, and you can get some good reference with this fee analysis document that will give you some idea of the codes and what's being charged in your general area. Additionally, in the verbal skills area, which is a constant training effort, there is a great ebook that you're welcome to, Why Case Presentations Fail. You can download that at totalpatientservice.com in the free resources section. So with that, I've got a couple more questions and then we will wrap up. On the fee analysis, we should have that back to you very, very quickly. The question is how long does the analysis take to do? So if you'll send us the email, we will turn those around very quickly and email back the analysis to you. Next question, Tanya, it says, to avoid fraud, when would you submit a Crown code for those doing it in 2 appointments. So,
Great question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that is a really great question. So to be perfectly within the boundaries of what it states in the rule book, it says when the treatment is completed, completion is considered when the crown has been bonded or cemented. So, and you will find most plans tell you that they pay on seat date, not prep date. So for those of you that are doing 2 appointment processes, the claim should be filed at the seat appointment or delivery appointment.
Got it. Next, code 9946 is used for what? Is that for a sports guard, or what is it used for?
So the wording on the guard on that particular code is the only difference between it and the 9944 is that it's partial arch as opposed to full arch. So in the event you're making a partial arch device, that would be the time to use that particular code.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Next question has to do with the fee analysis and the data. The data is data that's generally available from the insurance company. So if you've had, here's the recommendation. You should have that fee analysis done. There's several different sources where you can get the data. If you had it done by another source, you're probably good. If you haven't done one in the last 12 months, shoot us an email. Next question. If you plan to do a startup, can you email a couple of zip codes that you're considering? Absolutely. You can send us as many zip codes as you want. We'd be happy to do the analysis on those. Next question, in the fraud section, when contracted, can you reduce your fees submitted in order to discount to the patient? So you want to address that, Tanya, in terms of disclosing what you're actually charging so that you're above board.
Okay, can you say that question one more time just so I make sure I'm understanding?
It says, when contracted, can you reduce your fees? In other words, can you give a discount to the patient if you're a contracted practice?
Okay, so let me answer that two different pieces to that. Number one, we would always recommend whenever you're filing a claim, you always file your actual full fee, your office fee. Do not submit your claims with your contracted fee. Now, in your claim format, I mentioned the ADA 2012 claim format. You'll want to change that to ADA 2012F, and your software will automatically always submit your full fee. Now, the answer, I think what you're really asking is, so if we have a contracted fee, can we provide a discount? That's what Chris referred to as far as the remarks section. If you're giving an additional discount, then in your remarks section, for example, at Total Patient Service Institute on our financial arrangements form, we recommend offering a 5% courtesy when a patient prepays in full. So you would just make that in your remarks section, you know, that the patient has been given a prepayment 5% in full courtesy. I personally have never seen an insurance company come back and you know, give you any problems with that. But now you've made a notification, so you're above board on your rules as far as that you said what you're charging, and now you're telling them what you're offering them as a courtesy. I think that's what the question, I hope I'm answering that question correctly.
Yeah. Next one's related, which is if you're fee for service, you're not contracted with anybody, what are the rules about what you can charge the patient versus what you submit to insurance? And that has to be the same, right? So I mean, whatever you charge the patient is what you submit to insurance, right?
Right. It's the same thing, that it basically same answer that I just said would apply here.
Got it. Okay. So whatever you do, you just got to tell the truth.
Right.
What a concept. All right.
Right.
Last question. Well, no, it's not the last question. We have just a couple more minutes left, so I'll try and get through as many of these as we can. Question is, we have certain appliances that cost approximately $300 from the lab, but insurance covers $500. How can we still provide this quality procedure without losing money? So I guess it depends on whether you're contracted, right?
Right. So I would assume that that's coming from a contracted practice, because if you're not a contracted practice, charge whatever you want to charge. The unpopular answer is when you signed the agreement to become a contracted provider, you signed an agreement to accept their fee schedule.
Right.
That's the answer.
Yep. That might be a discussion with your lab and
Yeah.
how you can work together to provide the service.
One thing I would add, Chris and I are 2 of 7 practice advisors, and one of all of our favorite things to do is going into a practice and doing our version of a comprehensive exam. And so many times what we find, just like you, we diagnose things that you didn't even know were opportunities in your practice. So that's something of that line where, while that particular code, you may not be finding a great profit point on that code, we can probably uncover other ways to help you maximize coding, fee schedules, or even other arenas. So we do that service for all of you, and if that's something you're interested in, Answers at Total Patient Service can set you up with that comprehensive exam.
Next question. This is really an accounting question, but is it okay to write off the patient portion if the patient account has been delinquent and they're unable to reach the patient or collect?
When you send them to collections. So you would go ahead and initiate a collections process, and then yes, from an accounting standpoint, you write that off as bad debt.
Got it. Next one, question on the fee analysis, which is what percentile do you recommend that the fees land in? Tanya, you want to?
Well, so there's the hard answer that I would say, when we're working with a practice, we want to help you get your office fee up to the 90th percentile. But the other part of the answer is it kind of depends on where you are right now, because if you're in the 40th or 50th percentile, that's a very large leap to make overnight. So there may have to be a process put in place to get you up to that. One thing I would say, on your patients who have insurance that you are not contracted with, those non-contracted plans are typically paying on around 70% of your full fee. Now, there's some variability in there, but on average, around 70%. So if you find your fee schedule is in the 40th, 50th, 60th percentile, then there's a really good chance that you're filing fees that are less than what insurance would pay on. So for example, if you charge $70 for a procedure and they pay 100% and you file $70, they're going to pay $70. But if their allowed fee is actually $80, then essentially you're charging less even than the insurance company would allow. So to a degree, there's some money left on the table there. So that's another reason you want to at least be above what insurance would be paying on.
Got it. All right. I believe we're at the top of the hour, and there's a lot more questions. We could probably do a whole other hour just on questions. Here's what I would recommend. If you have more questions and you'd like some additional help, feel free to email answers@totalpatientservice.com, and we will direct that to the appropriate person on the Total Patient Service team that should be able to help you with your specific questions. Obviously a lot of questions, a lot of detail here. Thank you, ladies, for your great expertise today. And thanks, everybody, for joining us. We look forward to having you with us for our next Crown Council webinar. Have a great day.
Thanks, Steve.